I want to talk about something while we get ready today because I feel like it's going to hit home for a lot of you. And honestly, it hit home for me for like a really long time before I realized what was actually happening. And so if you ever have said like, oh, I just have really high standards, stay with me because there's a really, really good chance that what you're calling high standards is actually something else entirely. Let's get into it. All right. So first things first, we're going to start off with brows. As always, that is not changing. But as we get started, I want to, as I mentioned, I want to talk about the difference between perfectionism and high standards because I feel like for most women, we really do get the two confused and we assume that everything that we're doing is because we have high standards. But when you start to peel the layers back, you realize that it actually is just perfectionism. And for some of us, myself included, I considered myself a perfectionist for a long time until I started to realize that perfectionism is really just rooted in fear. And I say that because when you start to question why you do the things that you do, when you get down to the root of it, you realize that you are doing something or you're not doing something normally because of the fear of judgment of other people or the fear of someone else's opinion, not truly because you're like, this is what I do and why I do it. And a quick side note, if you are not using a pen to do your brows, I'm telling you, you're missing out. Like, look at just the difference between these two. And that was just for me filling it in just a little bit. I'll clean it up, I'll add some definition, but so easy. Back to what I was saying. So for years, I thought that the pressure that I put on myself was because of having high standards, right? So it's because I want to make sure my work is excellent. I want it to come out right. I want, like I over prepare. I over deliver. And this is in my personal and professional life. Like, think about it. How many times have you been at work or you're working on your business and you rewrote an email or rewrote a text message more than 2 times? I'm not talking about checking for grammar and wanting to make sure the message is clear, but I'm talking about like, oh, does this come off a certain way? Is this the right thing to say? Like, what are they going to think about this? Am I going to get the answer that I want? And I've found myself literally rewriting things over and over again for no reason because the person that I was sending the message to or sending the email to, they didn't think twice about it. It was one message in their entire day and they kept on with what they had going on, right? So when you start to pause and you ask yourself, why do you do the things that you do? Especially the things that cause you extra stress in your day. When you pull the layers back, you start to realize, oh, this isn't for me. This is for other people. So yeah, we sit there and we call it high standards when in reality, it's just fear. It's just fear that we dress up as high standards. But at the end of the day, if you stopped doing half the things that you're doing for other people, you start to realize that you were never doing it for yourself. And I have realized that after spending years in corporate management and myself and watching other women go through this spiral. I mean, think about it. Even with makeup, how many of us sit here and do our makeup and if it doesn't come out looking like someone else, we think it's a complete failure. Or we're like, oh, well, I'm just not as good or I'm not as talented or that just doesn't work for me. Without sitting here and realizing that we are all different. We all have our own face shapes. We all have our own skin tones. We all have our own undertones. And if we sit here and we let society basically continue to bully us, into thinking you should look like, act like, be like someone else, you'll realize that you're never going to be satisfied with your own life because you're constantly chasing someone else's. And that often happens with those of us who either claim to be perfectionists or don't realize that we're perfectionists, is that we sit here and we compare, we rewrite and redo, and we're just, extra cautious. It's not being cautious. It's being fearful when you're constantly thinking about what he said or what she said or what he thinks or what she thinks. And again, for most women, especially women who, you consider yourself a high achiever, you're someone who, wants to do things properly. That's the excuse we give ourselves. But when does it actually become enough? That's the question. And that's what I had to get to, is that in sitting here and trying to be everything to everyone, it was never enough. There was always more asked of you. There was always adjustments that either you wanted to make to yourself or that someone else wanted to make in your life. And you can sit back and look at your life and realize how much of your life are you actually living for you? How much of your life are you actually living for the approval of others? And I say this with a grain of salt, and I hope you hear my heart, because just because someone has an intention for you or an expectation of you, good or bad, that doesn't mean you actually have to go with it. And that's something that took me a long time to learn. Is there were plenty of people in my life who had really good intentions for me, but just because they had good intentions doesn't mean it's what I wanted to do in my life or what God wanted for my life. It can get very easy to assume that just because it's a good opinion, that you actually have to go with it. And I think that too is what's dangerous about social media, because you can sit here all day long and look at opinion after opinion after opinion. And then you become dissatisfied with your own life. And so you start trying to make changes and adjustments and all that. And again, in the end, are you really happy? Do you feel content? Do you feel satisfied? Authentic to who you are, authentic to who God made you to be? And I would say probably 7 out of 10 women, it's a hard no. We don't feel authentic. We feel like we are running and chasing for everyone else's opinion. I want you to ask yourself, am I striving for perfection or am I truly living with high standards? And here's how you can tell the difference. High standards are normally internal, right? So they're going to come from your values, your personal values, from what genuinely matters to you. And that is like from the kind of person you want to be to the kind of person that you want showing up in the world, all of those things, right? When you're operating from high standards, you feel really grounded. You feel secure normally on the inside. When you're operating in perfectionism, you're constantly worried about somebody else's opinion, right? It's totally built around perception. You are assuming or perceiving that this is the way it needs to be done because of something external to yourself, not because it's what you believe internally. And the reason it's so hard to catch is because normally if you're operating from a level of perfectionism, it is kind of like masquerading as high standards. So it's going to look like diligent. It's going to look like you being thorough. It's going to look like you're just, you're ambitious. You have goals. You have all these things. And again, for some people, if they're operating from that place in a level of authenticity, that's fine, right? But if you are operating in that space, but you feel uneasy on the inside, then it's not high standards. You're calling it high standards, but it's really just fear of other people's opinion. All right, really quick. So you just saw brows done, my foundation, concealer done. Like that's it. We're keeping it really simple. Still trying to look like me, just trying to, cover up a few little imperfections. Here's a tip to understand or to figure out if you are operating from high standards. When you make a decision or you do something, ask yourself, if no one was watching, if no one had an opinion or cared about what I was doing, would I still make the same decision? Would I still do the same thing? And if the answer is no, it's not high standards, right? So if you're at work and someone asks your opinion on something, on a project or on whatever the case may be, if you make that decision, but you pause and really start to think like, oh snap, like what will someone think about this? What will my boss think about this? And not from a place of, am I doing good work, but coming from a place of, what is their opinion going to say about myself, right? Like, how are they going to feel about me after I make this decision, after I send this email, after I speak up on a certain subject? Because if you can do that and your decision doesn't change, then you're good. But if you go into something and you're like, if I don't make the right decision, then, someone's going to think lesser of me. That should be a trigger that, oh, that's not a high standard. That is me operating on perfectionism. So I'm going to give you a quick story. I remember one time I was very early on in my career. I think I was maybe year 2 or year 3 in my career. And I got invited to speak on a panel. And the panel was going to be live streamed to the entire company. It was me and a few other leaders. And we were meeting with the CEO of the company at the time. And what was wild is, they obviously wanted to be casual and authentic and genuine, right? Like different people, different backgrounds, all coming to talk on a panel, right? And so I remember they prepped us with questions, like, here's the questions that are going to be asked, come up with your response, blah, blah, blah. Cool, fine, I can do that. So I can't remember all the questions, but one of the questions they asked at the end was, give me one word that describes something. I can't remember exactly what the question was, but I remember my word. My word was intentionality, right? And that was me being very authentic to who I am. I am a comms major, right? Like, love reading. I'm a bookworm, nerdy, all those things. So when it comes to words, I like to be very intentional with the words that I say. And I remember saying that word, and panel went fine. kept it moving. I get off the panel. And of course, people tell you, like, you did a great job, congratulations, blah, blah, blah. But I remember behind everything, there was a question of, was intentionality a real word? I kid you not. Fortune 500 company, and I had senior leaders questioning, is intentionality a real word? Now, mind you, it's now 2026. I feel like if anyone said that word, people would realize it. But for some reason, 10 years ago, people were like, oh, I don't know if that's a word. It is. But I bring that up to say, I said that word genuinely and authentically because that is how I would describe whatever that question was, right? If I would let people assume to question my intelligence, and if I continue to operate like that after the panel, meaning, oh, you know what, like I probably shouldn't have said that word. Oh my goodness, like I would be so disingenuous to who I am, right? Now, I say that because the word I chose it because one, I knew the definition of that word and that it was a real word and that it represented the answer that I wanted to give. But if I would have changed my mind after hearing all of this talk and been like, oh, I shouldn't have used that word, like, oh my goodness, what are people going to think of me? Like, my boss probably thinks I'm an idiot. Like, all this, if I would have changed the way that I showed up, that would show that I'm not operating from a level of my own standard, right? I'm operating from a level of, I'm focusing on what other people are saying and I want them to think good of me. So I need to match how they view me in order to make sure the narrative is correct. That is how you know. And I've experienced it. I've seen it over and over again with other leaders, other women, men included. And it's just really sad because you realize there is a lack of authenticity that comes with that space. Perfectionism says, I need them to see me as worthy. So I need to match their narrative. Having high standards and being authentic and genuine say, it doesn't matter what they think after this. This is how I'm showing up. This is who I am. This is what I'm doing. And so, yeah, y'all, that's a story that has never left my mind. I will remember that for the rest of my life because it was such a funny small moment. And again, people can have whatever comments or, just opinions. But that right there is a trap that I feel like so many women fall into because we can be so inauthentic to who we are. So it's like you can't always sit there and try to adjust to meet people where they're at. Like some people you have to keep it moving because if not, you're giving into the issue with perfectionism. You're giving into the fear of being judged. You're giving into the fear of being seen. You're giving into the fear of being found out, people not liking you. People are gonna not care for different things and different people, but you have to be genuine, authentic to who you are. Okay, real quick recap. So already did my foundation, did my concealer. We're gonna add some powder. I don't know what I'm gonna do with the eyes because I'm wearing red today, and I feel like red is already bold. So I don't know, maybe gold. Who knows? I did use a cream blush on my cheeks just to give it a nice flush because with red, I feel like sometimes it's very hard because it's such a statement color that you don't want to take away. Like I'm not going to do a red lip or anything. Um, we'll figure it out. All right. I want you to walk away with these tips. How can you tell if you're working in perfectionism or if you're working in your standard, right? Number one, I want you to think about, where does the standard come from? So when you think about the reason why you do the things that you do, can you actually say where the standard comes from and why it matters to you? Why do you operate in this way? What makes it important to you to operate in this way? So let's say you work out 3 times a week. Why do you work out 3 times a week? Is it because you have a fear of what people think about you? Are you afraid of their opinion if, you weren't working out, if you weren't in shape? Or do you work out because you care for your body? You want to have a healthy, strong body. You want to live a long life. You are aware of how certain foods affect you or how, not being active affects you. Like you have a personal opinion, reason, ideology behind that. That's a really surefire way to tell where you're operating. And again, you may operate in either one at different times, depending on what we're talking about. So maybe from a professional perspective, you at work, maybe at work you operate from more of the perfectionist lens. Fair, right? And then maybe you at home or you with your friend or you at church, you operate from a very genuine, authentic, nope, this is just my standard. This is just what I do. That's fine. I'm not saying that you're not going to be able to switch between them, but I want you to recognize when you're operating in one versus the other. So again, where did the standard come from? And the question to ask yourself is, if that disappeared, if that reason disappeared, would I still do what I do? And if the answer is no, perfectionism. All right, number 2, and this is a fun one. What actually happens when you meet that standard? So let's say you have a standard for at work, showing up really strong, being really present, delivering things not on time, but early. Like you have a strong perspective and reputation for that. What happens after you meet that standard? So let's say you were called to work on a project and you met the deliverable, everything went fine, and now you're on to the next project. Like, how do you feel after that project? Do you feel satisfied? Do you feel like, great, yep, I did a good job, let's move on? Or do you feel good, but you're still somewhat quietly questioning things? And I'm not talking from the perspective of like, looking at a project and seeing what could have gone better, but I'm talking about, tearing yourself down like, oh, I should have done this. Oh, I should have done that. Like, this is never happy. This is never enough. So and so's not happy. Or, I just wish, I wish. When you're operating from that level of perfectionism, it's going to feel like temporary relief. It's never going to feel like you've hit the mountain and now you can move on to the next mountain. It's going to feel like, nope, I need to go back down the mountain and climb back up to show that I can climb the mountain. Does that make sense? It's like you could never fully land. And clearly I went with the gold. All right. Number 3 is, how do you respond to feedback? And this is feedback in any area of your life, personal, professional. How do you respond to someone critiquing you or giving you correction or advice or instruction? Like, how do you respond? Because when you have high standards, you're naturally a little curious about feedback because you want to get better, right? You're constantly focused on kind of like having the growth mindset versus fixed mindset conversation. Like, you're constantly open to new opportunities, new ideas, just new ways to improve and get better. Perfectionism, it makes you feel like there's a verdict on your worth. Like, whatever someone says from a feedback perspective is going to determine how worthy you are in their eyes. That's the danger. Is it's not about the feedback specifically. You're not even thinking about the feedback. You are so hyper focused on what do they really think of me? And that can often blow things out of proportion. Number 4 is a key one. What does rest actually look like for you? Like genuine rest. Because with high standards, you can close the laptop. You can shut your email down for the night. You can realize like, hey, I gave my best today. I'm going to move on and we'll face tomorrow when tomorrow comes. But when you're operating from a level of, perfectionism, it never ends. It feels like if you stop, like everything's going to fall apart. Like you have to stay on top of everything because you feel like if not, the whole world's going to end. And one of the things I remember a few years back, I worked with a team where I would tell my team, if I go out of town, if I'm on, vacation, PTO, and I can't disconnect, that's a problem. Because as a leader, and regardless of if you're in leadership or not, if you can't let the work be the work and know that when you're not there, there's plenty of other capable people that can do the work. If you can't get to that point, then you have more of a broken foundation than you realize. Like if my team can't operate without me, that's a problem, right? Because I can't be here 24/7. And oftentimes the leaders who do that, individuals who do that, are operating from a level of perfectionism. Again, masquerading as high standards. Masquerading is just being on top of it. But really it's nope, you know that if something goes down, people are going to look at you and you don't want to be held um, accountable or held at fault. But I mean, the bigger issue is why can't things operate without you? But that's a different conversation for a different day. But I just want you to pause and think about that. Can you actually pause from work? Can you rest? Can you let the email go until Monday? Why are you checking your email on a Saturday? Like, those type of things. I'm not saying that you don't get work done when you have time, but focusing on when you take time to be intentionally away, can you still be away without feeling the fear of like, what if something happens? What are they going to think of me? And then last but not least, question 5, who are you doing it for? Like when it comes to the standards that you set, when it comes to how you operate, are you doing it for other people or are you doing it for yourself? Because most of the time, if you say you have high standards, then the work that you're doing is for yourself. It feels like integrity. Like if you didn't show up in this way, it would be inauthentic to who you are. But when it comes to perfectionism, it feels like you're succeeding, but it also feels like servitude because you can never get off of that hamster wheel of the constant thought or threat of what if? But it's like you're working for an approval rating that you never technically agreed to chase. And so here's the costly thing about perfectionism that no one talks about. It doesn't just cost you your time. It doesn't just cost you anxiety, and it doesn't just exhaust you, but it actually disconnects you from who you are, especially if you have been on the hamster wheel of perfectionism for a very long time. And what most people assume is, oh, it's just a productivity problem. Like, let me just log out more. Let me just send the email. Let me just do all of these actions without getting to actually the root of the issue. The root of the issue is you're delegating out your own authority. And so many women have spent years filtering every single decision that they make through somebody else's opinion. And that's real or imaginary, right? I'm not saying that it's just you who you talk to a friend, you ask that peer, you do all these things. No, no, no. I'm also talking to you who play imaginary conversations in your head just to prepare yourself for what could or could not happen. I know you because I'm that way too. It's exhausting and you have to one, realize that's what you're doing because you've been so focused on everybody else's needs, everybody else's opinion, everybody else's thoughts that your own voice just starts to get quieter and quieter. That's the problem with perfectionism. Until one day you are looking at your life and you realize it's not genuine. You can't tell if what you're doing, how you're acting, what you're even consuming is what you want or is it what other people want you to want. And it doesn't just get fixed with a better morning routine or eating the right foods. Like you've got to do the inner work. Okay, so finishing up with lips, I want to leave you with this. Releasing perfectionism isn't actually lowering your standards, contrary to popular opinion. Like, I need you to hear that because a lot of people think, oh, if I stop being a perfectionist, then I'm just going to start operating from, low standards. No, that's not it at all. When you stop operating from a level or space of perfectionist, you start just choosing your own standard over someone else's opinion, over someone else's expectation of you. And that, my friends, is not a step down. It's actually the harder thing to do because it requires you to trust yourself instead of trusting the crowd. And then what happens when you actually stop operating from fear and you start operating from your values, your standards just get cleaner, right? They become more sustainable. Try and choose between which which gloss. I don't know. I think because the eyes are light, I'm gonna go with the darker one. Yeah. So that's the key. When it comes to perfectionism versus high standards, you have to really pause and reflect and see which one are you operating from. And you can ask yourself those simple 5 questions just to see and test the water, see where you come out. And the reason why I want to have this conversation is because when you are operating from a space of high standards, the perfectionism will disappear. And it's going to take time and it's going to take practice. Like it's just like a muscle you have to build. But over time and over consistently doing it, you'll realize, oh, it really is easy to just make a decision and go with it and not have to fear and have all of those conversations in your head about what are people going to think? What about this? What about that? It's exhausting. All right, so here's what I want you to take away from this conversation. You are allowed to care very deeply about the work that you do and how you show up in this life without making your worth contingent on how it's received, right? Like you're allowed to have standards that come from who you are rather than what you're afraid people need you to be. And you're allowed to do excellent work and still rest, still say no, and still be a human with limits. The only people, I've said this before, on social media, the only people who are afraid of you having boundaries are the ones who are used to taking advantage of you not having them. And that's the difference. And now you know. So if any of those hits home, especially the questions 1 through 5, I would love to hear if it is helpful. Drop it in the comments. Like I genuinely want to read and just see, because again, it's something that I struggled with for years, so many years. And it's just now getting to the point where I can confidently talk about these things and then just share what I've shared with other women just to a greater capacity. And speaking of greater capacity, I do work with women one-on-one. So if you are interested and you're like, hey, this was a great topic, want to kind of go deeper, I do have availability and options to work together one-on-one. So I put the link in the description in case you're curious. And yeah, subscribe, please like, please share if you want more of these. If there's specific topics that you want me to cover, would love to. Again, anything related, obviously beauty, I'm here to still help with different things. I really like how this look came out because it's not your classic red makeup attire, if you will. So Let me know what you think. So with that, subscribe if you want more of these, and I will see you all in the next video.